Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about kind of an article I came across that I'll link down below for you guys out of Men's Health. And I think it's an important message because it kind of highlights something that a lot of young men have been deceived on in this industry, and that's it is very difficult, if not impossible, to get to very low body fat percentages and stay there for long periods of time. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And when you talk about these things, you always get people who are like, well, no, you're wrong, because I know a guy who sits at 8% body fat, and he's been there for like a year and a half straight. He stays there long term. He seems to be okay. Yeah, but you know what? There are also people out there who win the lottery. There are also people who are billionaires. There are also guys who were born and walk around with 10-inch dicks. Okay? Because those people exist doesn't mean that those rules apply to everyone else. These people, for whatever reason, have a set of genetic traits that will allow them to get away with that. All right? And I promise you, for every guy you know who is successfully doing this, there's 10 other guys you've probably met in gyms or training or have talked to who have gotten to those same levels of body fats and couldn't stay there. They found it impossible to stay there. So it's a very tiny minority of people who are able to pull this off. And the other question I would ask you, how many of these guys who you have met or who we see who do this, you go see them on the internet, how many of these guys stay on Tren or Anavar year round? How many of them are on growth hormone year round? All right, that's a big difference. And I'm not talking about, oh, they're on TRT. No, because TRT isn't that great for leanness. Let's just be frank. But there are guys who stay on Tren year round. And Tren can get pretty harsh at any sort of moderate dose. Your health can suffer for that. Anavar can actually hurt your health if you stay on it for a year straight. And it's pretty mild. People need to understand they're paying a price for this. And the majority of people are going to struggle with this. There's some people who have low set points on body fat. They have genetics, or they're using drugs, and a combination of those two things that's allowing them to get away from it. But it doesn't mean they're healthy, and it doesn't mean they're necessarily having a good time being at that body fat percentage. So what was noted in this article, Dr. Brad interviewed a guy, and they've got his before and afters and everything, and he's part of it. And it was a guy who pretty much started at 270 pounds, which means he's an overeater naturally, all right? Decided to get in shape. He had an issue. His wedding didn't go through, and he wanted to take his mind off of that. And he pulled a thing that a lot of guys do after a big breakup. A lot of guys go to the gym and get in shape. You know what? That's really common. I'm sure a lot of you out there have done that, yeah? A lot of guys have done that. Real normal. Well, he lost a bunch of weight and started getting in shape and figured, well, I'm already on a bland diet, I'm cutting, I should try to do a bodybuilding show. Let me go ahead and do this. So he did it, and he got down to about 8% body fat on an extremely strict diet. Extremely strict diet. What happens at the end? Within 2 months, he's gained 50 pounds back after the show. People call it PostContest Rebound. Why? Well, because simply put, you've put your body into an unnatural situation. The human body, for the vast majority of men, doesn't want to go under 10% body fat. And I like that it highlights that in this article, that there are some guys who get away with it. But for most people, single-digit body fats are not only unsustainable, they're actually a way to get fat in the long term. And what we mean is people who get too lean to the point to where their body kind of has a break psychologically, hormonally, everything else, to where their food cravings become enormous. When they finally binge, they don't just binge for a day, they binge for a month. And you know what? It's actually possible to gain a pound of body fat every single day. It's actually biologically possible. So you binge really hard for a month, you put on 25 pounds of fat, or 2 months like this where you gain 50 pounds, you consume a big chunk of its fat, you gain 30 pounds of fat. What just happened to your body fat percentage? If you were at 9% body fat and you gain 30 pounds of fat, easily can be done that fast. And so that's the problem you have. And this is one of the big issues that people run into who get obsessed with this leanness thing that's been put forward by the internet. Not only is it harmful to your health, it's not healthy. It can hurt you to get down to 8% body fat. People need to understand that. It's not a natural state for the human body. It's not a healthy state for the human body. And I'm not telling guys they shouldn't have a six-pack or be lean enough to have abs or whatever. But I'm telling most guys, staying in that somewhere between 10 to 18% is probably your healthiest place to be. All right, and some guys even 10% is too lean. A lot of guys closer to like 12%, probably a little better. And it really depends on the person. But you can have a six-pack at those percentages. But this whole getting shredded thing that's being promoted is actually harmful. And you know what? You see this happen over and over and over again. You only see a couple guys, even on YouTube, who maintain that really low body fat. You only see a couple. And you see a lot who struggle the other direction. And this is perfectly normal. And when you watch people who do anything to lose weight rapidly in the real world, you see this. And I'll give some other examples in a minute. But look at YouTube, for example. Look what Chris Jones does every year. Everyone's like, oh, the return of Fat Jones. He's just dirty bulking. No, have you guys ever considered that Chris gets so lean as someone who is himself kind of a big eater? He's got a big appetite. He likes to eat. He gets ultra ripped and then he gets fat. And everyone's like, he's fat. He's fat. He's got a big gut when he bulks up. Why? Do you guys honestly think he does that intentional? I like the way Chris markets himself. I like the way he markets himself. But do you really and truly think that that's his goal every year, to really do that? It's been marketable because he gets to bulk and cut and show you guys a cut every year, right? He makes good money showing you guys that. It's a good business model. But what he's doing is he's turning the fact that he knows he can't stay that lean. He knows he's going to rebound. He knows he's going to binge and get fat again, because that's in his nature. He's not one of those guys who can stay lean naturally. And what happens when you get too lean and you try to stay there too long, you end up binging so hard eventually that you get fatter than before you started your cut. So guys who sit around in maybe that 10 to 18% body fat range and they don't deviate from that, those people can usually sustain that, and they can sustain a lifestyle around that. They can keep that without feeling overly restricted. But oftentimes, and you'll see this happen, I mean, Chris Jones is a perfect example. What happens when they diet down to 8% body fat? They end up binging and going back over 20%. All right, we see it happen over and over and over and over in this world. I've seen this happen to so many people, even guys who had previously been able to sit in that healthy range for a year. Then they go on a cut, they get ripped, and then they end up fat. And then they say, well, I'm just bulking afterwards. No, they binged because you can't sustain it, and you end up having a rebound that makes you fatter than where you started. And the article points that out too. And you've got, again, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld even in there in that article, and this is being discussed. This is someone who really knows his shit about this stuff. And even he understands how to do it. It can actually, you actually can end up rebounding very frequently when you cut too lean, and you try to get too lean, and even worse, try to stay there too long. When you rebound, you're going to end up fatter than where you started. And it's just not sustainable. And this whole industry kind of promotes and markets this idea that, oh, that this is what should be your goal to get there. It's temporary. For most guys, it is so temporary that when you rebound, you're going to be worse off than before you started towards that goal. You're going to be worse off. And people are like, well, no, not really, because you bulk and cut and you gain. No, not really, because that deep cut down to 8%, you probably lost muscle. You lost muscle. And then when you rebound, you're gaining mostly fat. You don't have enough time to really regain a lot of muscle. So it ends up happening. A lot of these guys bulk and cut, and they don't really get any bigger for it. We see plenty of examples on YouTube of guys who do these bulks and cuts, and they end up the same size the next year. They put their body through a lot to just end up being the same size, just for that extreme look for a short period of time, and then they get fat again. And they end up fatter than where they started the first time. And it'll go in a cycle like that, back and forth, and then they end up gaining no real size. Again, this isn't ideal. And you know what? It's normal for people to regain body fat when they lose a bunch of body fat. When you take it outside of the fitness world, it's even more extreme. It's even more extreme. Like I know someone, one of Britney's family members, had gotten really skinny. She had a lat band, right? Lost over 100 pounds. Got way, actually almost borderline anorexic, way too thin. For those wanting to know, remember the pecan pie, infamous pecan pie video, there you go. She had an issue to where her lat band had to be undone due to a medical reason, and she regained all the weight she lost. She gained over 100 pounds within a few months. She regained over 100 pounds after the lat band became undone, and she just rebounded back to where she was. As soon as that artificial thing that's restricting you is gone, you tend to rebound, and that can include an overly restricted diet. So again, people need to understand that this is something that's been marketed to people as obtainable, but it's not obtainable. It's not obtainable. It's a continual sacrifice, and that sacrifice can be mentally and emotionally due to restricting yourself, but it can also be physical, because it can take a hard toll on your body to obtain some look that people have been told this is what they need to strive for, but the reality is it's temporary, it's unobtainable, and for a lot of guys, when they try to do that, they're sitting at a perfectly healthy athletic body fat, and then they do that, and then they end up, after they rebound, and then they bulk back to a body fat that was higher than where they started. And so the question I would ask, is that really worth it? I don't think it is. I mean, that's for you to decide, but I don't think it's worth it. And it's something that people need to factor in with this. They have these ideas they're going to get ripped and do this, and their life's going to be perfect in every way when they do this. And then they end up being miserable during the cut. They get ripped, and then they rebound and end up fatter than where they started. And then they don't understand how these other guys do it who are genetically gifted and stacking drugs in that allows them to maintain that. Those are guys who are just genetically lean, and with a little bit of tren and growth hormone in the mix, it's able for guys who are genetically lean, they're able to stay really lean for long periods of time. That's what's going on there. Big factor. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.